Hello, YouTube. Pastor Jack here, and welcome to my channel. First Things First with Pastor Jack. Today we're going to be starting into the seven C's history, and we're going to start with creation. And I just want to look at some important words that's in the first two chapters of Genesis that talk about creation, just to give you some ideas as you study this. I would like for you to read those first two chapters if you would, and think about some of the things I'm getting ready to say. So get you a notepad out and just write a few things down if you would. First of all, the first word that comes up, and when we talk about Hebrew, I have never studied Hebrew. I'm using exegesis techniques. I'm looking at dictionaries, theological books on Genesis, and I'm taking the word of people who have put a lot of time and effort into study, and so we're looking at some definitions of some Hebrew words. Now, if we were in Greek, I'd feel a lot more comfortable right now, but we're not. I've studied Greek many times, and I'm comfortable with it. Hebrew, I'm not, and so I'm going to be saying some of these words, and I'm not sure I'm saying them right, but I want to give you some information that you can look at the Scripture and work your way through these first two chapters. Some important words. The first word is bar, B-A-R-A. And it means to create something from nothing. It's used two times in these first two chapters in Genesis. Means create something from nothing. That's what man can't do. We can't do that. I make stuff in my wood shop, but I use stuff that God made to make stuff with. That's not the creation that this word's talking about. And it's used again in the first verse of chapter 1 that God created the heaven and earth, and He did it from nothing. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth from nothing. That was created as a word bar there. This brings up a couple of different opinions, and so Bible scholars start discussing, theologians start arguing about about creation in the first chapter. It says in the beginning, and there is a couple of thoughts about that. The one I believe is that in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. I believe He created everything He needed to make all the other days of creation. Except for when it comes to man, He generated all the material He needed. And so we're going to be using other words all through this first chapter besides bar. That's what I believe. Now, there is another group that believes that the words in the beginning was not taking place right here at Genesis 1. They're saying that at a time before Genesis 1, that God created the heaven and earth, and it had become, for some reason, void without form. They say that if God created it, wouldn't have been void and without form. I don't quite buy into that. I think God could create something from nothing and have it be any way He wanted it to be until He finished His creation. When He finished, it's not going to be without form or void. But I think you're stretching a little bit there. But those people believe that the earth was made and that there might have been other people on the face of the earth. And that for whatever reason, the earth become, people, but other beings. And that I don't want to put words in their mouth. And I've never heard somebody say that God created man before Genesis here. But I have heard people say that he had other creatures. And they think that they got the earth in a void state. And that God now is recreating this place that He made. I don't believe that, but there's some people that believe that, and I want to make sure you heard it. The other thought process is what I said to start with, and that is that God here in the first part of the creation made everything he needed to finish the creation over the 6 days. And that is probably the most accepted way by Bible scholars. The next word is Haya, H-A-Y-A, Haya. It's in verse 2, and it says it means, and it's also in verse 6, and it means to let it be. It's not creating something for nothing, but it says to let it be, and it uses those terms about light. Yasa, Y-A-S-A, and again, I know I'm not saying these right, but Y-A-S-A is in verse 7 about the expanse, and it means actually what we would say make, that God made it. He took something that was there and made it. In verse 9, Q-A, Q-A-W-A, it means to wait forth eager expectation. And that is where God, in the 9th verse, you can read about it, where he had the waters joined together and the earth come up. So that means that God spoke it and it started happening, and it took a few minutes for it to happen and that the earth come up out of it. And it's talking about, again, with eager expectation. It is to wait with eager expectation. Dasa, D-A-S-A, it's a consonant accusative. And what that means in Hebrew, it means a verb in a noun form. And in verse 11, this is interesting, where it talks about having the vegetation sprout. That's a verb in noun form. So what it means is something that the verb takes a while, that it was used in a noun form and it instantaneously happened. And so that when God made the vegetation, we know how it works in the spring. You know, we get the buds, and then the plants or the leaves or the flowers come out of that over a period of time, that God made it instantaneously happen. And I've seen videos where that was taking place, and it's pretty neat. And, you know, they were depicting that taking place. The next important word that we come to is mina, M-I-N-A. It's in verse 24, where it talks about the different kinds. And that word actually means to divide. So when God started making the animals, he divided them into their different kinds. That's important. It'll mean something big here when we get into the flood talk. But God did make animals by their kinds. Asa, A-S-A, means to make, and that's in verse 26 when he's talking about mankind. And then as we get into the 2nd chapter, when he's talking about creating man, he used a word, yasa, Y-I-S-E-R, wiser, I guess. And it means to form, and it means simple. And when he's talking about he formed man out of the clay of the earth, he was using simple. Manna, it's a B-A-N-A, means to build. And it was for the offspring, for increasing the offspring. And that word's only used a couple other times. And it is what God used for when he made woman. He built for offspring, woman. And that's in chapter 2, verse 22. So here are some important words that you need us to jot down. Watch the video again if you need to. Write them down where they're at. Go through and read those 2 chapters with those words in mind as you look at how God made those things. And it'll help us as we go through the 6 days of creation. And maybe that'll be the next video. God bless you. Keep the first things first. And I'll see you on the next video.